This boy is only 6 years old, but he is already used to his mother's daily beatings. Since birth, he has never seen his father's face. 6 years ago, his biological mother died giving birth to him, and his father, losing all hope, locked himself in his room and never came out. The lady of the house treated him like an illegitimate child, beating him daily as if it were his meal. Even when her hands were covered in blood, she still didn't want to stop. Today, they had an esteemed guest, and his father came out of his room. The guest was his father's senior, the Sword Emperor Namgung. If it weren't for him saving his father's life back then, the title of Sword Emperor wouldn't exist in this world, and his current haggard state made everyone forget that he was once the strongest swordsman known as the Moon Sword Guest. This time, Namgung brought his entire family, intending to ally with his junior. But when it came time for introductions, Namgung Yun had gone missing. Meanwhile, Yun Jioka was hiding in a corner, being punished. His frail body couldn't take it anymore and collapsed. When he woke up, he found someone approaching. Thinking it was the lady of the house, he began apologizing profusely, but standing before him was a beautiful girl. She was Lady Namgung Yun. Just by looking at his hair color, Yun knew that the boy was the son of her uncle. His frail condition must have been caused by the lady of the house. Yun unexpectedly patted his head and said, "From now on, I will protect you." That simple sentence made him burst into tears. Since birth, no one had ever treated him kindly. Lady Yun led him outside through a hole in the wall, and this was the first time Jioka had ever seen the outside world. He was also starving. Yun bought him some skewered meat. Though it was just a snack, he didn't know it could taste so good. Before long, they were found by the Namgung family's guards and dragged back. At that time, his father's condition had worsened. He spoke of the family swordsmanship, passed down from the Nine Heavens' mysterious lady, but he could no longer feel her presence. That was also the day the second wife passed away during childbirth. He didn't even dare to look at his son. His last request was for his senior to take care of his children in his stead. By then, Lady Yun had been found, and everyone was unsure who the ragged child beside her was. The lady of the house ran over, pretending to be worried. "Why are you like this? Don't you know how much I worry about you?" Her words were infuriating. Next to her, Yun's hateful gaze made the lady's spine tingle. As soon as the guests left, the lady completely changed her demeanor. Jioka's entire body began to tremble. "I told you to hide properly. How long are you going to embarrass me?" She then proceeded to beat him half to death. In July of that year, Yun Murgong passed away in his sleep. Right after her husband's death, Baek Miju summoned 20 martial artists from her family to join the White Tiger Manor, helping to protect her and increase her influence within the manor. At the same time, their eldest son, Mubek, went to the Namgung family to train, fulfilling his father's last wish, while the lady of the house had by then become the true master of Dragon's Nest Manor. She was frantically searching for her husband's martial arts manual but couldn't find it. She then ordered all of Yun Murgong's belongings to be thrown into storage, ensuring they were out of sight, and told them to throw that illegitimate child away as well. Thus, Yun Jioka was thrown into his father's relics, a father he had never seen, despite his pleas. Fortunately, they still had some humanity and brought him food and drink daily, though the food was so hard it felt like chewing on rocks instead of mantu. At that moment, Jioka noticed something glowing among his father's relics. It turned out to be a mirror. He carefully cleaned it and, seeing his reflection, couldn't help but sigh, "You've been abandoned too, haven't you?" Suddenly, his reflection in the mirror smiled at him. What on earth was happening? Time passed, and 2 months had gone by. Jioka was still locked in there. In the cold winter, the people outside thought he was dead. Inside, Jioka was curled up in a corner, shivering from the cold, while his reflection in the mirror wouldn't stop dancing. It was as if it was mocking him, but after observing its movements, something seemed familiar. Wasn't this the martial art that the senior disciple often practiced, the Nine Heaven Sword technique? If one could properly use the Nine Heaven Sword technique, a martial artist could circulate their inner energy and generate yang energy to envelop their body, preventing them from freezing to death. Jioka also picked up a stick and started practicing. As time passed, he eventually no longer felt cold because he had managed to generate yang energy to envelop his body. This was the first step in mastering the Nine Heaven Sword technique. Being able to warm himself was satisfying, but the mirror was displeased. It wanted him to become truly powerful. Jioka was about to put the mirror away, but it started demonstrating sword techniques he had never seen before. Then it made a challenging gesture, which annoyed him enough to imitate it. However, these techniques were incredibly difficult, and after a while, he couldn't master them, especially since he was also starving. Jioka carefully thought about it. The 9 movements of the Nine Heaven Sword technique somewhat resembled the techniques he had just seen, but he had never seen his senior brothers practice them. It wasn't until he was threatened that the mirror finally agreed to teach him. As it pointed a finger, countless mysterious characters appeared on the surface of the mirror. This was the true mirror of the 9 heavens mysterious lady. In an instant, 900 characters appeared at the top of the 9 heavens mysterious lady's mirror. Although the content was incredibly complex, Gioka felt as if the characters were running through his mind. This martial arts manual was the 9 heavens master swords. Time passed, and spring arrived. Everyone thought Gioka had died in the storage room. They didn't know that he was transforming day by day, practicing the 9 heavens master swords. Time went by, and 10 years later, he finally succeeded in mastering the technique. Today was also the day the eldest senior brother, Mubek, returned to Dragon's Nest Manor. Accompanying them were young Master Chun and Lady Yun of the Namgung family. She had grown into a beautiful young woman who had captured many hearts. Yun ignored the lady's greetings and went off to look for something. She wanted to find Gioka. But he was no longer there because the day before he succeeded in mastering the 9 heavens master swords, he had made a hole in the roof of the storage room and left. The 9 heavens mysterious lady had also disappeared from the mirror. When the lady of the house found out, she rushed over. She had no intention of looking for him because, in the end, he would have to die. A 6-year-old child in a grown body couldn't survive in the outside world. Lady Yun immediately confronted her with eyes full of the same murderous intent she had when she was younger. The room the lady called Gioka's room was filled with brand new items that had never been used, a facade to cover up his disappearance. Afterward, she immediately left. Mubek, who was by her side, also had his suspicions because Lady Yun was known for her perceptiveness. She was someone who always understood others with a smile as bright as a flower. Once she was curious about something, she would get to the bottom of it. If she was behaving this way, there must be a reason. The lady's face turned angry. "Are you doubting your mother?" She finally admitted that she had locked him in the storage room for 10 years. Mubek immediately rushed there, but Yun was already there. It turned out that the reason the lady kept this place so hidden was because this dark, moldy storage room was where a person had lived for 10 years. "I have to inform my father. You are my father's disciple, so I'm sure you won't spread any rumors. But the relationship between our two families can never be the same again." Meanwhile, Gioka was wandering outside in tattered clothes. This place had changed so much from 10 years ago. Just then, he ran into a guard from Dragon's Nest Manor. Gioka immediately wanted to leave, but the guard stopped him because he looked so familiar. But he couldn't return to that place, he had to run as fast as he could. The old man chased him closely, and the city gate was about to close. But somehow, the guard had already appeared behind him. Gioka had to run with all his might through the gate, but the old man still wouldn't give up. With a loud crash, it seemed both of them were about to be crushed by the gate, but Gioka caught it with one hand. The old man was stunned. "Brother, go wherever you want, I made a mistake earlier." After searching all day and not finding anything to eat, Gioka picked some mushrooms by the roadside and ate them. Unfortunately, they turned out to be poisonous mushrooms. His body lost all its strength, and he collapsed. The next morning, 2 people found him lying on the ground. They decided to take him in because it was the first time they had seen someone more ragged than themselves. He was taken to the 5 Peaks Mountain, where there were bandits known as the 6 Bandits. The leader of this place was Bung Yuncho. Since they had saved his life, he had to repay them somehow, right? Since he had no money, he had to work hard to repay them. Moreover, from the way he spoke, they realized that he was 16 years old but very foolish. They even thought he was mentally challenged. Then they dragged him outside and taught him a lesson. In this world, there are 2 types of people, those who take from others and those who are constantly losing. But do you want to live a miserable life like this and die in some corner? He finally understood and decided to become someone who could control his destiny, becoming a bandit. From now on, he was the 7th brother of 5 Peaks Mountain. After that, they made him shout, "We are the best." At that moment, for the first time in his life, Gioka felt excited. His stepmother had always cursed him, and his brothers had never cared about him or that hellish storage room. All of these thoughts flashed through his mind, and it felt as though something that had been frozen in his heart was shattering. This new desire to live awakened the dormant power of the 9 heavens within him. He shouted, "Are you watching without liking the channel? Oh, I meant, even if the sky falls, we are still the best." His shout sounded as if he was releasing everything that had been pent up inside him, tearing apart the clouds in this place, as if marking a new beginning in Gioka's life. And so, Gioka's life as a bandit began. He learned how to survive and how to live on the mountain, thanks to the bandits on 5 Peaks Mountain, who cared for him like their own younger brother. Young Gioka quickly opened his heart and adapted to his new life. Their martial arts skills were quite low because most of the bandits on Five Peaks Mountain came from commoner families, so they were used to getting injured whenever the government soldiers patrolled. However, they were always cheerful and found happiness in even the smallest things. One day, two martial artists came to this place because they had heard rumors of fearsome bandits. Who would have thought there were only 7 of them, including a kid, looking more like a group of beggars? They were from the Bandit Union. In recent years, the Bandit Union has become very attractive to bandits and dark sections. Many of them flocked to join, making Bandit Union's power even stronger. Gioka's group also came here to join, but clearly, he was just a child. In the end, to meet their quota, the leaders had to accept them, because this was the territory of the biggest gang. They were just managing them for the show, but with the main character here, they would be in for a surprise, haha. The next day, they carried the Bandit Union's banner to collect money. Everyone was happy, except Gioka, who had to stay home and clean. This task seemed too boring for him. As time passed, 3 months went by, and Gioka grew tired of household chores, so he used that time to practice the 9 Heavens Master Swords. Only by becoming stronger could he help them. Soon, a few people wanted to join their Five Peaks bandit group. They were criminals on the run for beating the judge's son and a girl who had escaped from a brothel because her family wanted to sell her again, so she decided being a bandit was more interesting than being a prostitute. With her around, Gioka wouldn't have to do chores anymore and would have more time to practice swordsmanship. The leader also assigned them roles according to their ages. But Chul-san objected, saying that if someone was strong, their rank should naturally be higher, right? He had received 3 years of training at the Martial Institute. The leader didn't hesitate to say that if he could defeat someone, he could take that person's position. Starting from the bottom, he first had to defeat the red-haired kid. Gioka thought to himself that if he didn't fight, how could he go up the mountain with his brothers? His serious expression made everyone tense up. The fight began. Chul-san, with his large body, threw a punch, but Gioka easily dodged it. But his counterattack missed as well because he was used to holding a stick, and because of that, he got punched hard and was sent flying. Now the big brother and the second brother were stunned. It seemed Gioka had never fought before. He kept getting beaten up. But Gioka wasn't the same as before, he countered with a punch. The other guy knocked him to the ground with another punch. He thought he had won, not realizing that Gioka was extremely tough. His entire body exuded a dangerous aura. "Come on, let's fight to the death." The other guy was terrified. How could a kid who took so many hits be completely unscathed? He then used all his strength to charge at Gioka. But at that moment, the desire to go up the mountain with his brothers ignited the 9 Heavens energy within him. With a powerful punch, there was a loud explosion. The 8th brother was knocked out and couldn't move. The big brother and second brother were shocked. Everyone only saw him charging at Gioka and then suddenly falling. But in the end, Gioka was the winner. Because of this, the big brother gave him a large sword, and he was allowed to go up the mountain with them the next day, which made him very happy. The second brother then personally taught him the Demon Slayer sword technique. The second brother was very fond of him and usually didn't teach the Demon Slayer sword technique to anyone. The next day, a group of merchants passed by Five Peaks Mountain. Their leader was worried about the bandits on the mountain. Just as he finished speaking, the big, dark-skinned brothers appeared. The big brother shouted, "This is the territory of the Bandit Union bandits on Five Peaks Mountain. If you want to pass, you must pay a toll." The guard immediately laughed. "Just 10 of you dare to call yourselves Bandit Union? We Mansu merchants are not a pushover that you can take whenever you want." The big brother immediately ordered everyone to shoot arrows at him, but this guy was too strong. He easily blocked the arrows. The big brother now felt intimidated. How could such a strong guard be among the merchants? This time, they had stirred up a hornet's nest. He shouted, "Now that you're here, don't expect to leave." The merchants' guards were ready to fight. The bandits were very scared, but if they turned and ran, none of them would escape. The big brother decided to stay behind to distract them so everyone else could run away, but the red-haired kid charged first. The guard looked down on him, thinking he was just a child. "Go suck your mother's milk instead of pretending to be a bandit." But Gioka was now full of confidence. "You will die on Five Peaks Mountain. No one is allowed to provoke us." The guard was now stunned. Youngsters these days were something. Gioka said, "If you're about to die, save your breath." The old man's face turned dark, veins bulging, as he slashed down with lightning speed, but Gioka effortlessly broke the sword in half. Everyone froze, unable to comprehend what had just happened. In the blink of an eye, Gioka dodged the attack and swung his sword with superhuman speed. The old man couldn't even see the strike. As Gioka walked forward, emitting a terrifying aura, he told the old man to find a better weapon and fight him again. He had only aimed at the weapon. If he had aimed for the man's neck, he would have been long gone. Realizing he was facing a true master, the old man bowed down, pleading for his life, as the cut on his neck was caused by Gyoka's sword energy. Gyoka didn't make it difficult for them and let them go after they paid extra toll fees. The gang leaders who witnessed this were dumbfounded. One of them asked, "Where did you learn that move?" Gyoka replied, "It's the Demon Slayer blade technique that second brother just taught me," which left him even more astonished. That's just an ordinary technique, and yet you could use it to break that guy's sword? Unbelievable. Then, they asked Gyoka to demonstrate the Demon Slayer blade technique to everyone. Gyoka didn't refuse. As he executed the moves, the technique's power was terrifying, directly chopping down a large tree in front of everyone, leaving them all speechless and in awe. Afterward, they all wanted to find second brother to learn the Demon Slayer blade technique, but even he was curious about who this red-haired kid was. From then on, every merchant passing through Five Peak Mountain had to pay a toll. Those who resisted were beaten to a pulp by Gyoka. Even the guards of government officials couldn't defeat him. The government issued a warrant for Gyoka's arrest. Rumors about the Five Peaks Mountain bandit group began to spread. Many people came to join them, increasing their numbers to 25. Over the next 3 months, the Five Peaks Mountain bandit camp grew larger, and its fame spread to Hunan, boosting morale. However, this also attracted more enemies. They gathered a lot of intelligence, hearing that the leader of Five Peaks Mountain used the Heaven and Earth blade technique learned from a street peddler, while the vice leader learned the Demon Slayer sword technique in a temple. The story was so ridiculous it was laughable. But their affiliation with the Bandit Union was no joke. If beggars had the beggar sect, then bandits had the Bandit Union. The master of the Bandit Union, known for defeating the Heavenly Demon Army, was a formidable force. However, no bandit group had yet to rise to fame in Hunan, as it was dominated by righteous sections. The bandits aimed to overthrow Gyoka's group and join the Bandit Union. At this time, 10th Sister informed Gyoka that some of the recruits were slandering the camp leader's sword technique as something learned from a street peddler. This enraged Gyoka, who wanted to settle the score, but fortunately, fourth brother stopped him, or else those people would have ended up inhaling incense without even shedding a tear. The next day, the camp leader called everyone together to organize a rank-up match. Those who wished to challenge had to start from rank 7. The old man with white hair began to brag. He wanted to be the camp leader for a year. "We're infamous. Why should we fear someone who used to be a street peddler?" This infuriated the leaders, but everyone had to follow the rules. First, they had to challenge Gyoka. Gyoka, now enraged, walked over with such a terrifying aura that it made the old men tremble. None of them dared to step forward. The two boastful old men then made excuses. "It's summer, but I feel cold. You guys go first." Everyone was stunned. Why didn't they say that earlier? One man was pushed forward to face Gyoka's terrifying aura. He wisely suggested they fight barehanded, fearing that if Gyoka used his sword, he wouldn't survive a single move. As the fight began, he charged with all his strength but was knocked out with one punch. The 4 remaining men were left in shock, wondering who would be the next victim. The bald man, following the previous example, chose to fight barehanded and was also knocked out with a single punch. The third man, being a bit more foolish, chose to use a weapon but was defeated with one blow. Only the 2 boastful old men remained, trying to delay the fight, as neither wanted to face Gyoka. Baekgyo, the white-haired old man, tried to manipulate the situation by saying they shouldn't use weapons against fellow camp members. So Gyoka agreed not to use his sword. But Baekgyo's fan was a weapon. He had used that fan to become a notorious figure in Hunan province, and fighting barehanded would be suicide. At this point, Gyoka realized the fan wasn't ordinary. This made him truly angry. He delivered a powerful punch that knocked Baekgyo to the ground for daring to cheat in front of him. Everyone was shocked, wondering if Baekgyo still had teeth left to chew his porridge. Only one man remained. Finally, terrified, he shouted, "I was just joking earlier. 7th brother, please go easy on me." Gyoka agreed to let him go but warned him that if he dared to challenge his senior brothers again, he should dig his own grave. Though frustrated, the old man had to bow down to them. The Southern Ocean Merchants Guild heard rumors that the 2 old men from the 3 great demons of Hunan had submitted to the Five Peaks Mountain bandit camp and that this man was the great demon of Hunan, Li Muriang. The Five Peaks Mountain bandits had been causing havoc for a long time, and now was a good opportunity to take down the 2 old men. This was a chance to kill 2 birds with one stone. Li Muriang was confident because he had 90 men, 3 times the number of the Five Peaks Mountain camp. That night, the Five Peaks Mountain camp was ambushed, with countless fire arrows raining down on them. They intended to smoke them out like rabbits, as there was only one exit from the camp. However, the camp leader quickly ordered everyone to build a second wall. Outside, the great demon of Hunan marveled at their quick reaction. Despite being hit by so many fire arrows, not a single person fled. He was still boasting about his brilliant strategy when he was stunned to see the new wall inside. This made him furious. I anticipated this. If those bandits are smart enough to do that, then there's still a way to destroy them. He grabbed a large axe and approached the inside. Everyone started shouting, "There's a delusional fool coming. Is he planning to chop wood with that axe?" This only made him even angrier. The old man immediately recognized that the person before him was none other than the leader of the Namyang merchants, the Heavenly Sword, Li Miriang. This guy, whether by sheer stupidity or natural tendency, was using an axe to break through their wooden wall. Suddenly, the large wall began to crack. It turned out that Gioka had struck. With his tremendous strength, he sent Li Miriang flying. After blocking one of Gioka's strikes, Li's hands wouldn't stop trembling. This kid is too strong. With murderous intent blazing, Gioka demanded to know if he was the one who had set their camp on fire. Even with such overwhelming numbers, he had been so thoroughly defeated that he had to resort to fire arrows. "So how do you intend to compensate for this?" Gioka asked. Li Miriang was furious and snapped, "Compensate for what, huh? You lot have been causing trouble on Mount Five Peaks. I'm acting on behalf of the city of Hunan. Do you think you can challenge me and get away with it?" He boasted, "I don't know how you defeated Shim Yangak and Baekgyo, but I am stronger than they are." The two then charged at each other. Li Miriang used the technique Infinite Shadows of the Horse Hour, creating countless clones that attacked Gioka, but Gioka blocked them all and then counterattacked, forcing Li to retreat. At this point, Li Miriang was terrified. Infinite Shadows of the Horse Hour was a technique from the Huashan sect. But how could a mere bandit avoid such an attack? He shouted out, asking where Gioka had learned his martial arts. "Of course, it's the demon-slaying blade technique, taught to me personally by my second brother," Gioka replied casually. "Your move was pretty amusing. Mind if I copy it?" Before Li could finish his sentence, Gioka had already replicated the technique perfectly, shocking everyone. "How is this possible?" Li Miriang exclaimed. Infinite Shadows of the Horse Hour is the ultimate secret technique of the Six Harmony swordsmanship of the Huashan sect. It represents the pinnacle of stillness in movement. Though it might seem like a simple slash, the technique contains thousands of variations. Even Huashan disciples find it extremely difficult to master. Yet all the effort Li had taken such pride in over the years was destroyed right before his eyes. Is this guy a monster? Li Miriang wondered. He had just seen Gioka perfectly copy a martial art technique at a glance. But Li had misunderstood, Gioka's clones were not just illusions, they were all real. Gioka had surpassed Li Miriang, who had studied this technique for decades. Li was beaten to the ground, at which point he began to beg for mercy, promising to compensate fully before. The battle ended with a victory for the Five Peaks Fortress. With this triumph, the fame of the Five Peaks mountain fortress spread far and wide, and the number of people joining the fortress increased steadily. The various factions started to take notice, but they were hesitant to act, suspecting that Gioka might be a disciple of the Azure Forest sect's leader, the heaven-shattering demon god. If he were just an ordinary boy, how could he be so powerful? The leader of the Mansu Merchant Guild, Sang Muchuan, the Stormwind Swordsman, had to travel to Huguang. He intended to go to Mount Wudang to seek assistance. After all, he was an outer disciple, and his master was none other than Elder Chun Ji of Wudang. The Wudang sect was one of the top 10 sects, and the inner disciples there had reached realms that were unimaginable to most. If they could bring a few of these masters here, what would that red-haired kid amount to? The day he is defeated will also be the day the Five Peaks mountain fortress meets its end. Meanwhile, Gioka was leading some junior sisters out to eat. With the strength of the Five Peaks mountain fortress, they no longer lacked money, and he even bought himself a new outfit, making him look even more dashing. The girl in front of him, named Sobek, had just joined the fortress last week. She had fled because a thug had threatened to force her into marriage. Just at that moment, the thug showed up, brazenly threatening her again, saying that if she kept running away, she would only find death. Gioka had to step in today. "I'm in a good mood, so I'll give you 10 seconds to get lost. If not, don't blame me for losing my temper," he said. The others nearby continued eating nonchalantly, reminding the thug, "You're done for." Sobek added, "We're from the Five Peaks Fortress, and the person in front of you is Gioka, the strongest in all of Hunan." As the 10-second countdown ended, there was a thunderous crash as the thug was sent flying by a kick, nearly toppling the old man behind him as well. The old man was none other than Elder Chun Ji of Wudang. The leader of the Mansu Merchant Guild had rushed over, exclaiming, "It's him, master." But Chun-ji scolded him, "Stop causing trouble for me. I'm just out for a walk to get some fresh air." He hurriedly made his escape, the place already in ruins thanks to Gioka. Luckily, they brought enough money to compensate the shop owner. After all, even bandits must have some principles. Gioka then agreed to teach martial arts to the two who had been wronged as compensation. At the same time, the Wudong elder realized that Gioka was not the disciple of the heaven-shattering demon god, because with that old braggart's personality, there was no way he would hide such a little monster. This trip down the mountain wasn't in vain after all. Unexpectedly, he encountered a martial arts genius in such a place. 3 days earlier, at Mount Wudong, Master Taihio had brought tea to visit sect leader Chun-ji. He came because the bandits, who claimed to be from the Five Peaks Fortress, had been wreaking havoc, causing great headaches for the Mansu Merchant Guild. "If you send another disciple to protect the peace of Hunan and assist your disciple, wouldn't that kill 2 birds with 1 stone, he suggested. Elder Chun-ji decided to take on this matter himself because, over the past 10 years, he had regularly divined the future for good fortune. That very morning, he had drawn a great luck divination. This was surely an opportunity bestowed by the gods. If he could recruit Gioka as a disciple, he would undoubtedly become the strongest swordsman in Wudong. At that point, the sect's reputation would soar. Meanwhile, the main hall of the Five Peaks Mountain Fortress had been completed. It was simply magnificent. Since the Five Peaks Mountain Fortress had grown so rapidly, the Daebial Fortress had helped them build additional halls to match their current strength. To fill these new halls, Fortress Master Peng Yanku had invited military carpenters and their families to join them. In a bamboo forest, Gioka was instructing 2 junior sisters in martial arts. First, they needed to practice breathing techniques. He recited a long passage, leaving them speechless at how much they had to learn in one go. He then instructed them to close their eyes and focus on their breathing. Soon, they managed to grasp the technique. This was the first time Gioka had ever seen anyone cultivating, and he too became engrossed in his training. His body was floating in the air, leaving the 2 girls astonished. Gioka was fully immersed in the 9 heavens, 9 swords technique. Whenever he encountered difficulty, the reflection of himself in the mirror would appear to assist him. Thus, his swordsmanship continued to improve. Around him, numerous golden flowers began to appear, shocking the 2 girls. They wondered what kind of mastery one must achieve to reach such a level. When they returned to the mountain camp, only the eldest brother was there. It turned out they had received news that Elder Chun-ji had arrived, and most of the people had fled. No one knew how to handle the situation because the opponent was too strong. It was time for the Five Peaks Mountain camp to end. Elder Chun-ji was a senior elder of the Wudong sect. He was once the strongest in Hubei. Moreover, his disciples were also very powerful. They couldn't just sit around waiting for death. Only 10 people remained, all in a state of despair. At this moment, Gioka asked the eldest brother, "Can that so-called elder cut a person with just a leaf? If he's not that strong, I can handle him." However, the eldest brother couldn't let the 7th brother face such danger. He immediately declared that the Five Peaks Mountain camp would be disbanded to protect everyone's lives, despite not wanting to. As the leader, the eldest brother couldn't abandon the place and chose to stay and fight alone. When the wall crumbled, everyone appeared to resist. This was their home, they wouldn't let anyone destroy it. The eldest brother asked, "What are you going to do here after announcing the disbandment of the camp? Didn't we agree to live and die together?" That night, they rebuilt the wall and took turns standing guard, determined to live and die together, even if it meant dying. During the night, they swore a blood oath, vowing to share both blessings and hardships. The next morning, Elder Chun-ji's army attacked. While the brothers were still asleep, Gioka had already woken up. He couldn't sleep, worrying about the upcoming battle. The eldest brother, like him, couldn't sleep and they practiced some moves to relax. At that moment, the army arrived outside. "I am Sang Muchuan, the leader of the Mansu Merchant Guild. Surrender now. If you continue to resist, we'll turn this place into a river of blood." The eldest brother charged forward. He couldn't let all the responsibility fall on Gioka. But the enemy forces were overwhelming. He thought to himself, if we're going to die anyway, might as well go down with a fight. He started cursing at them. "Do you think we'll run away because of a few old men? Do you think you can deceive us? Even if someone stronger than Elder Chun-ji comes, we have no reason to be afraid." Chun-ji, of course, couldn't let his reputation be tarnished. With a loud shout, he knocked the eldest brother back and suddenly closed in on him. Fortunately, Gioka intervened in time, striking with a terrifyingly powerful sword. Elder Chun-ji, who was he? He could feel a massive force emanating from that sword strike, but he believed he was still stronger. "You sure talk big," he said. "I have to commend you for your exceptional talent at such a young age, but it seems you're a bit too arrogant. Gioka recognized the old man. He seemed familiar, perhaps someone he had seen at the restaurant before. Although he could sense the elder's strength, he was confident that the old man was not his match, and certainly couldn't cut someone with just a leaf. Their battle began at an incredible speed, each clash creating a tremendous shockwave. This was a battle no ordinary person could interfere with. After a few moves, the old man still couldn't land a hit. Chun-Ji started to think carefully, wondering if this brat might be a disciple of the heavenly demon slayer. Elder Chun-Ji immediately asked, "Who is your master?" Gioka didn't answer. Instead, he raised his sword to the sky. The elder's aura began to change, and a bagua symbol appeared behind him, a technique that only Wudong elders could use. With one strike of the Taiji sword, he managed to injure Gioka's arm. Seizing the moment, the elder moved behind him, launching a powerful sword attack to push Gioka back. At that moment, the elder was running in the air, unleashing a series of mighty sword strikes, each causing a massive tremor, sending everyone flying. It had been a long time since the elder had to use all his power in a battle, but it seemed to be over. Suddenly, a pillar of light appeared behind Gioka, emerging from the smoke, making the elder panic. A giant dragon appeared behind Gioka. Gioka taunted, "Old man, are you still holding back? Your attacks are too weak. Looks like I'll have to go all out." The elder, enraged, charged at Gioka again, but was pushed back by Gioka's sword. The elder's strength was waning, and he could only muster one final attack. The two passed each other in a flash. This familiar feeling, the elder had encountered it many years ago. "Your name is Yun Jakha," he realized. The elder recognized that Gioka was the son of the strongest swordsman, and with that, defeat was inevitable. This time, the Five Peaks Mountain Camp had won. Everyone cheered for their victory, while the leader of the Mansu Merchant Guild couldn't believe what had happened before his eyes. His master was so powerful, yet had been defeated by a mere boy. The elder warned his disciple not to make the mistake of challenging Gioka, or else he'd end up in an early grave. News of this spread quickly across Hunan province. How could someone who had become an elder of a sect lose to a mere bandit like that? The young swordsman, rumored to be a sword cultivator and bandit, was truly a monster, and now no one dared to oppose the Five Peaks Mountain Camp. To preserve the honor of the Mansu Merchant Guild and the Wudong sect, the guild leader, Sang Muchian, tried his best to silence those who had witnessed the event, but news of the Mansu Guild's defeat still spread rapidly throughout Hunan. Along with that, the reputation of the Five Peaks Camp soared, and the 10 who remained were hailed as the 10 heroes of Five Peaks. Even the leaders of the Azure Forest sect were taking notice. Initially, it was just a mission to meet their KPI, but they had become unexpectedly powerful, and the Six Harmonies Alliance, set to take place in a month, would now be an event the Tan Lam leaders had to witness to see if they had what it took to join the alliance. This trial had just ended, and yet another challenge was looming. Will he continue to overcome it? Subscribe to the channel to follow the next part. Peace.